As gamers, we have recently experienced an unbelievable amount of slop. Starting from Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, ending with World of Warcraft, Diablo 4, and Destiny 2. An unbelievable amount of slop. And then there's Rogue slop, which has arguably been even absolutely worst. Avowed, Concord, Unknown 9, so many examples of this travesty. And because of that, well, the only reasonable thing is happening. Gamers are not buying new games. We are playing the games that we have bought up 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago that are in our back catalog, which literally can take us upwards probably, if I don't know for you, but for a lot of people, it's probably literally years of game time to actually finish at this point. With all the good deals on Steam, with all the games that you thought you want to play but didn't have the time. Why would you buy new games at this point? When you can just experience the old good games. Or maybe you want to play something modern but good. Well, go play Baldur's Gate 3. There you go. Super easy stuff. Helldivers 2 is still around. By the way, Palworld is still actually a phenomenally good game, honestly. No one just talks about it anymore, but it's still there, and it's still great.
Okay, so this is fun. I've got a question for my American friends. How does a $1,000 PS5 Pro sound? Or maybe even a $400 Switch? And I guess if you're Nintendo, you're going to be a little bit more spooked about the Switch too. Now, those are not numbers that I have pulled out of some nether region, at least one on me. No, those are from the worst case predictions of the American Consumer Technology Association. We like games, we would like to buy games, and that's kind of spooky. And you know what's real funny? George Lucas, once again, is right. How wrong we were when we eye-rolled at the Phantom Menace's trade negotiations. Just this time, right? It's not corporate greed, it's not price hikes to cover failing products. No, this is the potential impact of the trade war on gaming. Now, we did see a little bit of that last time we went.
I mean, last time it literally was called Concord tax when your PlayStation 5 Pro is now $700. Because, you know, Microsoft doesn't enjoy the idea of losing 500 million on Concord, so they kind of want to get it back, and that's your PS5 Pro price now. Have fun.
Through this fun period, it's a little more spicy now, and once we actually get into the details, that's where things are different to last time, because beyond the obvious price increases to, say, GPUs or consoles, there's a hidden cost, and that hidden cost is the rapid decline of the physical games market. That's a decline that the big publishers, well, you know, the big console people absolutely want to happen, but for a lot of us, those discs represent ownership, they represent freedom. And this will be bad for those discs. Now, it's not all doom. I'll be able to share how some companies have at least taken steps to try and avoid the worst impacts on your wallet. But that's...
So far, if you don't understand anything Bellier is saying, neither do I. So, okay.
In the here and now. And big picture, a lot of troubling trends are actually set to accelerate. Now, because you're watching this, I know you want to actually know how the world works. And
no. I want to be blind to the evils of the world.
Alright, so the big picture is the USA, China, Canada, and Mexico are all locked in a standoff over implementing trade tariffs. And this is a damn volatile situation. Like, literally since we first wrote up this script, there have been more tariffs. It really is fun. Now, the core principle, right, is that a tariff is a tax that is charged on imports from an affected country. So imagine a GPU that is manufactured in China. In order to import that from China to the United States...
Wait, does China manufacture a single GPU, though?
Company doing the importing will have to pay an extra 20% tariff, right? And to be very clear here, because I have seen a lot of confusion over this, that's the company buying it into the USA that pays the tariff, not the company in China who manufactured the GPU, right? So big picture...
I do not want to hear a single goddamn words about tariffs. This conversation has been raging on for weeks. And I have a financial background, as some of you may know. Worked for the government, worked in finance, blah blah blah. At 25, was told I should fucking finally just become department head of finance, and that's it. That's my genius fucking background. And this tariff conversation is right on absolutely no front. Every single side, no matter where you stand on it, is looking at tariffs in the most brain dead simplest way possible. And it's just completely not a constructive thing to do. Tariffs are way, way, way more complicated, starting from what they do, how they do it, why they work. Like, currently there are literally hundreds of millions of people who think that tariffs don't do anything. Then why the fuck does every country on the world use them if they don't do anything? If they can only be damaging? Because that's not the truth. I'm gonna tell you the super basic short run of tariffs. Tariffs are mainly used in every country to protect already existing production infrastructure of certain things. Because the infrastructure maybe is not, because it's simple. We can now, because of logistic chains and things like that, import things from other countries relatively easy, okay? And if you have a long-standing logistics chain, that means that you're using probably ships, and ships are literally the cheapest way of transporting goods, and it's literally pennies on the dollar. So, if your country's inner everything can't actually compete with other countries' output, you put tariffs on those things. So your people who sell shit in your country now no longer now have less incentive to buy things out of other countries, because they will have to pay more, and they can't just upscale the price. Well, like how everyone's constantly talking about that. Oh, tariffs are just taxes on the people in the country. That's not always the case. There are exceptions to this. There are a lot of exceptions to this. It's just so people use domestically created stuff. So the domestically grown market becomes better, more sufficient, more productive, more capable of competing in an outside world, and maybe becoming an export strength for your country. That's what tariffs are supposed to do. Now, granted, there's a lot of things with tariffs, like, for example, how Trump is using them. Like, there's literally no fucking inner workings of any infrastructure for some tariffs that he does, which is kind of questionable, but that's more like a bargaining chip, not an actual real thing. But again, all of this is way more complicated. I do not want to hear anyone talk about tariffs.
The point here is to make foreign-made goods more expensive for you to purchase in your local region, because whoever is buying those goods in to sell to you has got to pay a 20% tariff, for example. The whole point is that's more expensive so that you will buy local, which in this case would mean you're buying America-made computer hardware, consoles, and physical games. But the problem is those aren't really a thing. And this stuff's not all a theory. We've actually seen the
I mean, again, this is a vastly oversimplification of what I just said, but kind of okay at least.
Impact of this already. The first impact was felt on GPU.
Didn't expect that Bellier would ever get something right about finance, but I mean, we live in a clown world.
So the RTX 50 cards, right, that whole series, they went up in price because of these tariffs. The retailer Newegg basically confirmed as much in a tweet, tweets that they've now deleted, which is a bit weird, and they later told Tom's Hardware that the increases were, quote, due to a number of factors that are unfortunately out of our control. Which, to me, does read tariffs. But there are other things. I mean, the GPU market is pretty damn volatile and chaotic. Nvidia didn't ship enough cards anyway, a lot of accusations of paper launches, so this whole fluctuation in GPU prices kind of passed under the radar, because basically, we're all kind of pissed at Nvidia. Now, even if GPUs were previously exempt from tariffs until now, no one is really surprised by expensive GPUs in the current market. So, GPUs, expensive, not really a surprise. But the worst impact on your wallet could very much be yet to come. So here's the deal. Manufacturers were allegedly stockpiling newly produced GPUs before the new year, right? With anything that was already in the US exempt from these tariffs, because it had already been imported, it was in a US warehouse. And that means that anything newly produced and then imported would be subject to the tariffs, and that would increase the consumer prices even further. So that kind of sucks. But for gaming especially, it also sucks, right? And not just for PC players. So that group that I mentioned, the Consumer Trade Association, they estimated these tariffs could cost US consumers $7 billion more for consoles. Just quite a few dollars. Now, the impact here, right?
Thankfully, no one uses consoles anyway, even in the US. If this affects anyone, it's gonna be the black community, I'm pretty sure, because they play Madden a lot or something like that. I think there was a statistic about that. Anyway, literally not my problem.
It's more than just your wallet. It is going to go across the industry, almost every aspect of it. Right now, okay, there is no evidence to suggest that digital products are going to be impacted by these tariffs. And that's because there are various trade agreements that are in place to protect digital goods. Now, that does depend on everyone honoring those agreements. Maybe they won't, but let's assume they will. Let's assume digital will be fine, because we got to talk about what we know would not be fine, and that's physical games. Before doing this story and one previously, I had no idea about this. So, do you know where the majority of American game discs come from? The answer is Mexico. So, that's basically where they are manufactured, and that means that if the Mexican
Ooh, that's the play. That's the bad play. Shit.
tariffs continue, publisher costs for making physical games will increase. Now, there is some good news here, right? The estimates are suggesting that this would be just under $1 per disc. Now, yeah, that's millions of dollars across millions of discs. It's not huge, but it's also not the whole story. And this is where I'm going to cut to a analyst, Matt Piscatella. He's been in the analyst biz for like 20 plus years, bit of a legend, works for Circana, and he predicts one of two outcomes from this, right? His first prediction, publishers can increase the cost of physical games and also of digital games to ensure price parity. That would be them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, though. I instantaneously understood what's the idea there. Yeah. I mean, if you increase the price of one, you kind of can't increase the price of the other because people expect that, kind of. Stupid.
Passing the cost onto your wallet, but then, of course, making it, fair. And
Fair.
increasing the price of the digital games to match. Of course, those digital games not being impacted by the tariffs. So that would be a sneaky business if they did choose to do it. The other thing they could do, though, is also not really good, because it's just choosing not to produce physical discs at all. Now, they could sell the latter as a...
Yeah, that's impossible. It's the same thing as with Magic the Gathering I talked about. Most of the money is now made from the online game Magic the Gathering, and selling cardboard packs is kind of fucking stupid at this point, but they're still gonna do it because it's free money. So selling a couple of discs is still free money, so they're gonna continue doing this. This is not vanishing. This is actually, I have no idea who this guy actually is. Never heard his name. And, I mean, that just means he's not actually that good or that much of a fucking legend. Also, he has a Blue Sky social profile here, so, you can fill in the rest of the blanks, I guess. But no company is gonna just say, oh, we don't need free money. You need to understand that 90% of physical copies sold are pre-orders. You can just have stores, physical stores, accept pre-orders, and well, when the pre-orders are done, you ship them out like the pre-orders that they wanted, plus like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30% more, and then people fucking buy that shit. It's super easy, it's free money.
Consumer good, basically saying, look, we need price parity between them. We're not going to do these physical things anymore. We're going to protect prices for the 60% of the market who are playing digital games. They could probably write up a press release selling that as a good
60% of the market that's playing digital games. Listen, homie, the digital market is like 95% of all games at this point.
thing.
Relax, belly.
Delayed, right? Because we don't know if this will ultimately end up coming to pass. What we do know for sure, though, is that there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty is bad for business. Uncertainty can also be an excuse. There's a lot of companies doing layoffs and various things based on these tariffs, even though they don't know if the tariffs are actually coming, and it will often seem like, well, the uncertainty of tariffs is just an excuse to do layoffs that some companies plan to do anyway. As for this, though, why would you commission several million discs for a game releasing in 3 months if you've got no idea how much...
I love the idea that they want to use tariffs as an excuse to lay people off, which is hilarious. When was the last time a single fucking gamer cared about a developer getting fired, okay? Last time I hear developers being fired, I cheered. The last time I hear developers being fired, I cheered even harder. Okay? This is something that I personally champion. The firing of useless shit tier developers, vocal losers, pink-haired shits. And most people also do. That's the reason why Vogue Gaming never succeeded. And again, this is kind of the Vogue tax. All of this is not really a problem, but remember those insane statistics that like 70% of Steam users have not bought a single game released this year and last year? That all Steam users are just playing old games pretty much at this point? Yeah. Yeah. That's the Vogue tax. And that's a bigger tax because that is mental.
They'll end up costing in the end. But of course, it's not just that. It's also the consoles that play those discs. And you know it is serious when Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft all decide to band together as friends. Now that's what they did in 2019, whenever these tariffs were proposed, right? They basically banded together and they warned that a 25% price increase would mean that...
By the way, small fact, the last time Trump was president, he did enact tariffs. I don't remember on what exactly at this point, but he did. And nothing changed.
The games console would be, quote, out of reach for holiday spending, that consumers would have to spend $840 million more on their Christmas consoles. And because they did that in 2019, they got themselves an exception. In 2025, they have not got an exception. And of course, there's a big problem if you're Nintendo and you've got a Switch 2 coming. I mean, yeah, it would suck for Xbox and PlayStation, but, you know, if Nintendo got disproportionately impacted, I'm sure they wouldn't be that sad. Because, of course, their follow-ups, right? The next generation, that's, well, still going to be a few years. And being real with you, it is the span of the next few years that actually matters. I'm pretty sure you've noticed there's a little bit of a, you know, recalibration of the whole game board, right? In terms of the world politics, multipolarity, all those fun things that are totally out of the scope of this channel. But suffice to say, shit is changing. And now these businesses are trying to work...
I have no idea what multipolarity means, if it actually even means anything.
Work out how they basically survive and how to not price themselves out of the market. And they've been doing that for the last 5 years because they have seen this on the horizon. All three have moved some of their production outside of China. But even with that, the US is still an absolutely huge import market. This was pointed out by Daniel Ahmad of Nico Partners that post-2019, US imports for Chinese products were reduced in real shipping terms. But, right, console imports remained above 75% of the market. So that actually...
This is an interesting thing because a lot of places are trying to leave China, but not to come back to the US, by the way. A lot of places are trying to leave China for India, the now more cheap slave market, if you will. For example, Apple. Apple is tired of dealing with people jumping through out of buildings and landing into nets in China because that looks bad for PR. So they're gonna go to India, but they're just shackled to their workstations. There you go, problem solved.
Actually means that console imports are still pretty damn exposed to all of this risk. And it does...
Not that I give a shit about any kind of modern slavery, by the way. I welcome it.
Makes sense. Like, rebuilding a whole infrastructure to build all those consoles will take time and money. And that's a lot of work to build a parallel production line. That's going to take time. That's going to take money. Money that will be passed down to us. And of course, as the first to launch, Nintendo has likely made the biggest move here. David Gibson, another analyst, pointed out that after 2019, Nintendo started on a plan to basically do as much maneuvering as they could to move 50% of their production to other regions. A big example is, say, Vietnam, and it does seem like Vietnam is a real beneficiary of, well, companies just moving their manufacturing elsewhere. The plan basically being they're still going to make a shitload of consoles in China, it's just they'll go to other places and the Vietnam consoles will go to America. But that will not mean there is no impact on your wallet, because the cost of moving your whole production, well, that will have to be recouped somewhere. Let's talk worst case scenarios, and to be honest with you, right? There's some spooky shit to come, but it's actually on top of shit that's already real spooky. if you've watched all of our videos, you may know this, but the TLDR, right, is that when you actually adjust for inflation, premium console spending has been remarkably flat over the years, right? Last year, 2024, actually saw a
That's because modern day inflation is bullshit.
sales decline. So the vibes have not been good, right? In basically the games industry. And this could, well, change things a bit. So if these tariffs continue, estimates are that console sales will drop by 57% at worst. Bear in mind, they were already kind of low in the last few years.
What? That's Kotaku saying that? Who gives a shit? Console sales by a year. List of best-selling game consoles. Go. Let's check if we can find by year here. Is there a graph? Release date, 2020. Okay, 2021. I can't really compare them properly. I can't really compare them. Well, actually, I kind of can, I guess. Okay. So this. Wait a minute. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. There we go. So this is, for example, Xbox. There we go. Xbox started 2001, 24 million consoles sold, right? That was just the start because they needed to deal with PlayStation. They were the big dog there. Then Xbox gets a little bit of breathing room. They become a major player. Xbox 360. 84 million consoles. Xbox One 58 million consoles. Xbox Series S 28 million consoles. So, why is this important? Because this is the analyst trick that I use for my predictions on literally everything, which all of these analysts fucking use for literally all of their predictions. That is just fucking looking at a trend. You put these values into Microsoft, 84 million, 58, 8 million, 28 million, and then you just take your cursor, take these three things, click on the bottom of the square on the right side. This the right side? Yeah. On the right side, and drag it down one thing, and it's going to create the parity, the decrease. And there you go. Or if you want to be super fucking fancy about this shit, you calculate the percentile difference between 84 and 50 this, and then 58 and 28. And then put those two sums together, divide by 2, and then you minus that percent off of 28, and there is your super advanced analyst way of figuring out how many whatever fucking consoles you're gonna be selling. This is literally whatever the hell they were talking about, and this is literally how they do it. I can guarantee you there is nothing else that is being done there. That is being an analyst 101.
And the Consumer Trade Association thinks that it will get worse. And yeah, I mean, you've got Sony basically keeping par with the PS4 generation, with the PS5 generation. I believe they may have slightly outpaced it, but Microsoft is behind. So it does seem that those console sales basically are on the downtrend anyway. Now, if you start slapping on 10, 20, 25%, right, of an upcharge, well, shit, those console sales are going to go down even more. And even if that stuff doesn't happen, the risk, the uncertainty...
No. Probably not. 50% is still going to be the estimated average, because the less consoles are being sold, the more concentrated the consoles are on people who are console fans effectively. They don't even own a PC. They just use a PC at work maybe, and who knows, are struggling with updating Adobe Flash Reader or something. Yeah, those people. So it's not going to drop that significantly because of price hikes, because the lower you get into a popular product and its sales, the more fans are left. And fans don't really care that much about a lot of things.
will impact how much it costs to do things, right? And that means it'll be passed down to you. I mean, a luxury good like a new console or a GPU is already something that you really think about before buying, that you've got to justify. And that is harder if you have 20% more cost. You're not alone if that is your feeling. There's analysts, one example, Joost van Drieden, maybe that's his name. I tried. Anyway, he suggests that even with the best possible outcome, right? And, a new generation of console spiking interests, that console sales would be dropping again as we approach 2030. I suppose that would be the GTA 6 sales bubble finally going away and us realizing, I don't know, gaming's dead. So, in
Same. This is like estimated like your average 10% increase maybe. It's just like, okay, if a miracle, like this guy is just saying, if a miracle happens, I mean, they're maybe gonna sell slightly above the 0% decrease mark, so maybe 10% if you're being super lucky. There you go.
going away and us
It's a
realizing,
joke.
I don't know, gaming's dead. So, in the worst case, this actually could be building up to be the weakest games market in a decade. What happens to the games industry as a whole in this worst case scenario? Well, physical games would slide further and further into obsolescence. If you care about preservation, that's not good. If you want to be an absolute bandit and borrow a game from your friend instead of downloading it again, or, buying it, rip that, obviously. PCs and laptops would be far more expensive under these tariffs, so they would not escape fully. But the PC market actually might be uniquely more resilient because you can use your PC for like more than just like what a games console does. And that means if you are going to be spending a bunch of money doing that on your PC, well, that's probably where it's going to go over something like a console. Now, that is, of course, if audiences don't just switch to, phones and tablets, which would be sad. Or maybe settle on like streaming platforms like, GeForce Now and stuff. Kind of hard to say. Digital spending for PC would likely continue to grow, basically, but that doesn't necessarily mean more games. And if it's anything like the trends that have dominated the last few years, it'll
Digital sales for PC are gonna keep going up because every new generation is more gamers. Okay? And the previous generations are dying off, surprisingly, right? I mean, time happens, right? And a lot of those people are not gamers. So the statistical amount of gamers is increasing from the fact that non-gamers are dying because they were the previous majority of people, and new people getting bored and growing up becoming gamers because that's popular nowadays. So the spending for things like this, yes, it's gonna increase because the market saturation now is slowly happening.
It'll basically go like this. Less full-priced premium game sales because people have got to be a bit more smart with their money in an economic pinch. Less next-generation games as developers basically stay with a far larger audience. They stick to what they're doing. You'll see more free-to-play games that have got a lower barrier to entry and more microtransactions to monetize that audience, and probably more microtransactions that are geared to be hyper-premium. Because the thing about money is, it all actually does have to go somewhere, right? And as wealth inequality, changes, well, why do you think that Riot are doing $250 skins for League of Legends? Because,
People buy them.
because they've got a lot of money that maybe you don't have. I'm now going to try to do something.
It's not like they have a lot of money. It's just like there are people who pull. Again, it's called being a fan. The same thing I said about consoles. The fans are gonna buy them no matter what.
Real dangerous making predictions, but I actually think I'm going somewhere with this, right? So when, say, an animal is backed into a corner, it's going to fight for its life. If a mother thinks that the baby is under threat, it's going to just be so much more, powerful, aggressive, whatever. Well, whenever our games companies are a bit backed into a corner, they're maybe facing some systemic decline, how are they going to get more money? Well, I think I know, actually. I think we're going to see the growth of in-game advertising. We recently talked about it in a video that was really focused.
Oh god, that's the fact they're gonna put in ads into your games. Jesus. Anyway, that's it. That was Bellier. 10 out of 10. The gaming woke tax, this is effectively. A lot of this is just woke tax. Because people are refusing to buy modern games. That's the actual reality of it. You can, like, everything else is also happening, but man. Anyway, bye bye.